Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. I was going over some Rogue One footage the other day and thinking about how amazing it would be if we could have another war drama Star Wars film. But then when I got to the end and I saw CGI Princess Leia, I thought, well, how did she get there? I mean, I've seen Rogue One at least 50 times by now, and I guess it was a novelty to see Princess Leia, so I never really thought about why she was there in the first place. And by there, I mean, why was she in the Battle of Scarif? Princess Leia was a representative of Alderaan, a member of the still intact but kind of useless Imperial Senate. Now, Princess Leia was a rebel at the time, but she wasn't in the open about it and still trying to preserve her public face as a senator. So why would she be on the rebel flagship in one of the largest battles the rebellion was involved in at the time? Well, let's take a look. Now, the story I'm more familiar with is the Legends version of what Leia was doing prior to her traffic stop on the Tantive 4. In Legends, before Tatooine, Princess Leia had traveled to the world of Routia under the guise of a diplomatic mission. Routia, like many of the worlds Princess Leia visited at the time, was under heavy Imperial occupation. The planet lay right on the Perlemian trade route, right next to Coruscant, and was a major financial hub in the galaxy. The destruction of their direct rival Munilists during the Clone Wars had propelled the planet to even more riches. Although the Routia government and people were generally pretty pro-Empire because of their location in the core world, recently the Routia people had begun to protest against the Empire's heavy-handed invasion of the Tion hegemony. The Tion hegemony had once been a powerful faction in the Outer Rim during the Old Republic era, but a massive Rakghoul plague along with the Clone Wars had decimated its power center. The Empire had more or less left that part of the Outer Rim alone, but after finding some rebel bases in that territory, they launched an all-out invasion, and the citizens of Routia began protesting in the streets. The Emperor decided to make an example of the planet and sent Lord Tion and the Imperial-class Star Destroyer Devastator to bombard the planet into submission. No one is really sure why the Emperor cracked down on Routia so hard. Maybe he was scared to see such an important core world like Routia have civil unrest. Most of the core worlds had benefited from the Empire's rise and stability and generally were very loyal. It was usually only planets in the Outer Rim that had a significant rebel presence. Maybe the Emperor was finally starting to lose it and going crazy, shattering his image of a benevolent hooded uncle who likes to hand out sweets at family gatherings during Empire Day. Routia's major city centers were completely destroyed, and all of its citizens were rounded up in camps where Imperial officers were looking for rebel sympathizers. A blockade was created sealing off the entire system, and Princess Leia on the Tantive 4 had arrived on Routia using her usual excuse of bringing relief supplies for refugees. Lord Tion had refused all previous attempts by relief organizations to land on the planet. But he was attracted to Leia and permitted her to land because he was super thirsty after massacring so many peasants. Guys, don't put your hands on a woman's face, especially a woman that you hardly know. It's very creepy. You have to at least take her to a fancy 5-star establishment like the Olive Garden first. Show her that your love for her is endless, like the authentic Italian breadsticks and pasta bowls found at the Olive Garden. Leia later shoots Lord Tion with his own blaster on Alderaan because he tries to make moves on her again before taking her to the Olive Garden. Because when you're there, you're family, and Leia loves her family. Anyway, two important things happen here. One is Leia, while on Routia, picks up a rebel spy by the name of Basso, who confirms the existence of the Death Star. Two, Darth Vader runs into Leia and attempts to search the Tantive 4 for any connections between her and the rebellion. Leia, after all, was known for being quite critical of the Emperor in the Senate. Luckily, Lord Tion comes to save the day and lets her leave the planet before Vader can do so. Leia eventually makes it to the nearby planet of Katada, where she tries to offload her supplies there and tries to contact local smugglers who can bring the supplies to Routia for her. While on the planet, she gets caught in a skirmish which escalates into the Battle of Katada and narrowly escapes. It was a costly battle, but ultimately the rebels managed to slaughter all the Imperial troops that had landed on the planet, preventing the Empire from finding out about Princess Leia's allegiance to the rebellion. Which is all in vain because, as we mentioned, Lord Tion arrives on Alderaan shortly after Leia does, and tries to make moves on her sans Olive Garden and takes a blaster in the gut. Princess Leia is a fugitive, Tion is dead, and Vader gets the Devastator. Things are beginning to spiral out of control, and Bail Organa is forced to make a move, especially after rebel cells manage to steal the Death Star plans. You see, in Legends, the Empire had split the blueprints for the Death Star into many different pieces so that the Rebellion couldn't get their hands on it. Kind of like what Lord Voldemort did with the Soul. Bail Organa sends Leia to Tatooine to retrieve Obi-Wan Kenobi and has her take the Death Star plans with her as well, so she can link up with the Mon Cala cruiser Liberty afterwards. Vader had a protocol droid called U-3PO planted on the Tantive 4 and was able to track her with the Devastator. Now that's the Legends version of the story, and as we can see, Leia is still trying to maintain some kind of secrecy. She's pretty active within the Rebellion, but she still did her best to maintain her public image as the princess from Alderaan. And that's because although the Senate was quite powerless at the time, Princess Leia was still beloved by the people, and if anything happened to her, there would be a lot of backlash against the people who did it, including the Empire. In canon, her story is a bit less fleshed out. Princess Leia still is the same character, more or less. She's delivering relief supplies to planets like Lothal, while also accidentally allowing the rebels to steal her transport ships. Funneling money and resources as large as a frigate was a pretty hard thing to do unnoticed. Although in canon, Leia is very supportive of the Rebellion from very early on, she doesn't officially join the Alliance to restore the Republic until weeks before the Battle of Yavin 4. The canon version of the Rebellion seems much less developed at the time than in the Legends timeline. Just months before the Battle of Yavin, Leia was still in the Imperial Senate making speeches against Emperor Palpatine and generally being very frustrated about how little power the legislative body has over the entire galaxy. All the senators were afraid of Palpatine and basically rubber-stamped everything he wanted. At the time, the only thing she was really able to do was continue running Alderaanian mercy missions to areas that were being neglected or suppressed by the Empire in the Outer Rim. Around the time before the Battle of Scarif, Pablo Hidalgo, the top creative executive at Lucasfilm, confirms that Leia was tasked by the Rebellion at the time to go to Tatooine to pick up Obi-Wan Kenobi. In both canon and Legends timeline, the Rebellion viewed the ancient Jedi warrior as a key part of their overall strategy. After all, Obi-Wan Kenobi had once been a general in the clone army, known for his tactical and strategic brilliance and reliance on high ground. Bail Organa most likely sent Leia there because he was one of the few people who actually knew about Leia's real parents. Obi-Wan Kenobi had stayed relatively out of touch for quite a while, and it was unsure if he was ready to step back into the limelight. You try staying the same after being stuck in the desert for 20 years. Bail Organa figured in order to get Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding, the best way to do it would be to send the daughter of his former Padawan and best friend Anakin Skywalker. At the time, the Alliance to restore the Republic was still in the beginning phase. It was really just a loose coalition of different factions who all happened to be pissed off at the Empire at the same time. One of the most important factions was Admiral Raddus's Mon Calamari. They had escaped from the deep fryer that was Mon Cala after the Empire had taken over the planet. Raddus had brought with him a large Mon Cala cruiser, the Profundity, which served at the time as the flagship of the Rebel fleet. The Rebel Alliance only recently had moved their entire operations from Tatooine to Yavin 4. Jyn Erso had arrived there with news about the Death Star and its supposed weakness. When Rogue One launched this mission without permission and became stuck on Scarif, Mon Mothma quickly diverted all Rebel resources to assist the small Rebel unit. This included Admiral Raddus's Profundity. Prior to the Battle of Scarif, Admiral Raddus was actually appointed to escort Leia to Tatooine. In many ways, the beloved princess was now the face of the Rebellion. She was loved by the people, inspired them to join the Rebellion, and was deemed way too important to lose. Now, it's unclear why Leia doesn't just stay on Yavin 4 with Mon Mothma as Raddus goes to save Rogue One. Now, Tantive 4, her ship, is actually docked within the Profundity at the time, so this could be one of the major reasons. The Tantive 4 had been damaged on a prior mission and needed extensive repairs to its hyperdrive, engines, and weapons. Raddus didn't have any time to dislodge the ship before leaving for Scarif. Now, one version of canon says that Leia actually volunteers to go to Scarif to be the messenger to bring the Death Star plans back to Yavin 4. Bail Organa was not happy about this and requests that after she retrieves the plans that she goes and seeks the help of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It kind of really makes no sense for Leia to volunteer herself because at the time her ship wasn't really space-worthy, so not really sure what to believe here. Anyway, as we all know, nothing really ever goes according to plan for the Rebellion, and before the Profundity can jump into hyperspace with the plans, Vader's Devastator arrives and he immediately disables the Profundity. Vader weaves a graceful dance of destruction through the Rebel ship, but ultimately is unable to prevent the Tantive 4 from escaping. should have probably posted some TIE fighters to guard the hangar door, because as we said, the Tantive V4 was really in no shape to fight its way out of there. Some emergency work had been done on the ship while it was in the dry docks during the battle, but the weapons and shields were only partially working, and the hyperspace motivator gave out before the Tantive V4 could even make it all the way to Tatooine, where Vader's Devastator was waiting for them anyway. In canon, Vader didn't have a protocol droid that could spy on the Tantive V4. Supposedly, he tracked the radiation leaking from the Tantive V4's damaged hyperspace motivator all the way to Tatooine. That, or he scanned the Tantive V4's exit vector and lined it up with known systems, including Tatooine, which Vader has some history with. So there you have it, guys. That's basically the rundown of what Leia was doing before the Battle of Yavin. I guess they had to figure out a way to connect Rogue One to the events of Episode 4. They didn't do the best job with that, but it was a cool surprise to see her at the end of Rogue One. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.